Okay, so the first bit of information I'd like to address is when you should change the head. I've worked with a few band directors who thought it was a good idea to change the head on a scheduled basis, maybe every other concert season or every concert season. I had one in particular that liked changing the head every concert. I'm not going to exactly denounce those philosophies, but I will say that if you're on a tight budget, that might not be the best idea. The truth is, these heads on this concert snare drum, or these concert snare drums rather, can last quite a bit of time, as long as you get something that isn't super thin. And by super thin, I mean like 2 or 3 millimeters. That's something that I would play with if I was going to audition. This head in particular, this Remo Diplomat Renaissance coated head, is designed for concert snare use. Also designed, I believe, for drum set use. And I could keep it on for a decent amount of time if I didn't want to change it. So anyway, the stock head that a lot of these Pearl drums come with is quite capable of lasting you a few years. Take care of your drums, band directors. The first thing you want to diagnose when it comes to changing a drum head is, are there little dimples in the head anywhere? This head is a poor example of a head that's in bad condition because it's in really good condition. This head I've maybe used for like a month or so when I first got this drum. And there's no dimpling, there's no stretching of any sort along the side, and there's not really any defects that would cause me to want to change it other than for the purposes, you know, of this educational video. But when you see a drum head in this area having any kind of dimpling, you know it's time to change it. This is the typical area that a student or, you know, anybody would play on the drum in. And dimples are a sure sign that you want to change the drum head. So, in the absence of dimples, it's kind of a sad thing to have to change the head, but there you go. I mentioned stretching as well. I probably should point that out. There's a little gap here where the head meets the rim of the drum shell. And this gap needs to be consistent all the way around. When you drop the drum, when you expose it to heat or pressure, maybe like you jammed it into a bus for a concert on top of a bunch of, like, you know, brass instruments, or rather below a bunch of brass instruments, that can cause warping of the rim, the drum head itself, or worst case scenario, the wooden shell, or in this case, the aluminum shell of my drum. These kind of things are very, very expensive to replace, and the head's going to be the least of your concerns at this point, but nonetheless, be on the lookout for that. Alright, so without further ado, I'll show you how to take the head off of the drum. A lot of times these drums will come with the head stock from the factory. You'll have to tighten it up. That's something I could probably cover in a different video. But assuming this drum's all tuned, assuming this drum is all ready to play, we can go ahead and start removing the head. So, the counterintuitive thing, or rather the intuitive thing to do, at least for me when I first started playing, is to just go around and loosen all of the little lugs, you know, one by one. This is a mistake. What you want to make sure you do is, in a star pattern, loosen them in very small increments. So I'm going to take my drum key here. This is just a standard drum key. Here's a little bit. Fits right on these lugs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start with these two across from each other, this one and this one. I'm going to go right here and do I guess it would be a 180-degree turn. A half turn, I'll call it. I'll do a half turn on each of these lugs, right across from each other. Then I'll move on to the other set of lugs that are, I guess, running more or less parallel, or perpendicular to my angle. You'll have to forgive me, I'm not necessarily going off a script here. I'll move from these 4 lugs to these lugs, or these lugs rather, just to keep the tension even. The purpose of doing this is that you don't want to put undue strain on any one part of the drum. If you loosen all the lugs here and they're loose, there's a lot of undue strain on this half of the drum. These force the head down evenly, hopefully evenly, across the drum head. And you want to make sure that you're doing it as evenly as possible. If you forget, like I just did, how many turns you did, or the amount of turns you did, it's a good idea to redo them. At least the tension is even across the 2 lugs that are across from each other. Might have given these too many turns to the left, but in relation to these, at least it's more or less proportional. The diagonal ones are where you want to watch out. You got these lugs, you got these lugs. Now I'm gonna arbitrarily say, let's move to these. Boom. Boom. And then these. Boom. Boom. And the order isn't quite as important. I've seen people do cross, 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 cross. I don't like doing that. I like it to be completely even when I'm loosening tension on a drum. But that's just my personal preference. This is a really, really safe way to do it. Marching drums, snare drums, concert toms, drum set drums. This is my safe way to do it. So anyway, we are going to continue loosening them by a half turn. And I will see you in the next portion of the video. Alright, we are back, and I have loosened all the lugs around the circumference of the drum head. And as you can see now, the head is very, very, very malleable. And if I take a stick here, never want to do that, by the way. I don't know why I just did that. It's a surefire way to get dents in an otherwise good drum head. But assuming you're changing it, the drum should sound pretty much dead. So I've gotten them loose, the lugs loose to the point where I can use my fingers to loosen or tighten them. It's a little hard because I need to make sure these are properly greased. What I'll do at this point, and this is just like trick of the trade type stuff, I will loosen one with the lug, or the key. I will loosen one lug with the key. Let's try that again. And I'll try to loosen the other one across from it with my finger, in the absence of two drum keys. I would really like two drum keys, but I simply don't have two drum keys that are suited for concert use. What you want to do is you want to loosen all the lugs all the way around to the point where they're completely out of the lug casing, which is this part right here. I'll show you on this screw since it's relatively close to the camera. So these are going to come really loose. Haven't dealt with concert snare drums in a while. Please forgive me. Get it nice and loose. Alright, boom. Don't want to lose these. You want to make sure they're hooked on rather tightly to the rim. That is one design flaw in Pearl drums that I will never get over. And I'm sorry. Most drum companies have these lugs and the lug fasteners attached to the rim. I personally like it better. Thank you, Yamaha, for doing that. Anyway, this is pretty cathartic. So you want to attempt to lift the rim off eventually. If you can't, like I couldn't just now, there's a few more bolts you got to get. Lugs, bolts. I need to stop using those terms interchangeably. These are not bolts, these are lugs. Grumble, grumble, complain, complain. Yeah, this can be fun, or this can be a chore. You gotta take care of your drums. You gotta keep them sounding good. They are an integral part of any wind ensemble, excuse me, ensemble, and any orchestra. Alright. Not quite there yet. Still one trapping the rim down. This one is finicky. You know what? I'm just not gonna bother. Okay, one more. This one's the culprit. I'm sure there's more exciting things to do than watch me take lugs off the remote drum head. Alright, so I should be at the point, yes, where I can lift the rim off of the lugs. Okay, maybe not. Where are you? Sneaky one, sneaky one. Okay, I should be at the point where I can lift the rim, yay, off of the drum. So here you go. I've got these floating little rim thingies. I want to really watch out for that. I guess I see why they did this. They want to make sure that you can move the rim at your will to make sure that the tension is evenly spread across the drum. It's kind of like rotating tires. But I dropped another one. I don't want to get into that right now. That is quite an advanced concept. So now that we've gotten those all to the side, we can take the drum head off. And this is where things get interesting. Obviously you're going to discard this, assuming it's a bad head. I'm not actually going to discard this, I'm sorry, I'm cheating. Right here, this is where a lot of people get it wrong. You need to clean this. You absolutely 100% need to clean the bearing edge. This is where the head comes in contact with the actual drum. This point right here can make or break an entire drum. Let's say you got a dent in these. This one thankfully is made of aluminum. But if you have a wooden drum, like most people will, as they become band directors or as they purchase their own drums, you're going to notice that it's a lot easier for it to warp, for it to chip, for it to crack or whatever. And if you have any imperfections in this part of the drum, the head will not fit snugly on the drum. There's going to be some kind of vibrational error in the drum. I don't know how else to describe it, to be honest with you. But it's never, ever a good idea to have a chip. Excuse me, I just closed the door. So anyway, you want to clean this. I personally like to take a rag, and I don't really use Cosmoline anymore because I heard that degrades the shell. But they do make specialized cleaners for snare drums, and drums in general, rather. And you're just going to want to go around here and make sure that this is free of any debris. Another reason to change the head is because if you noticed, when I had this head on, right here was encapsulated by the rim. A lot of gunk likes to collect in here. Thankfully, if you're throwing the drum head away anyway, it doesn't matter too much, but there's another reason that you should be motivated to change your drum heads as needed. Okay, now that we have it off here, the next step is simply to grab a new head, pretend this is a new head, and place it on the drum. This is where my OCD comes in. I do not like the Remo logo on Remo drum heads, which is pretty much all I use, to be off center. God, God. I also don't like it up here, to be honest with you. For the purposes of high school band, however, I think that it can be really useful to have the logo up here. When you're playing soft snare drum, you want to creep up here, as opposed to playing in the middle and getting a very full sound. You want to come up here. Pro tip. If you want soft snare passages to be played by your kids who just know how to bash on drums, have them move their beads up here. This is where the quiet snare drum play comes in handy. Your snares aren't as activated by the top head vibrating onto the bottom head, vibrating onto the snares, and you'll get a much quieter sound. Anyway, all that aside, I personally don't like this because it puts gunk on my sticks. I've played on Remo heads long enough to know that, I mean, you can't really see it here, but you get little marks and this slowly abrades. And then when the kid goes to play on other drums, you get little bits of Remo logo all over the drum, and it's just a pain. So I like taking this and rotating it back here. It makes no difference. The same drum head all the way around just has a Remo logo stamped on it. You're going to hear a lot of contention from percussion instructors and band directors about where you should face the Remo logo. I like it back here. It can be over there. It doesn't matter. I just like it being even. Anyway, tie right over. I am going to show you what you do. So, I have a rim here, and there's two little holes that you may or may not be able to see. Let's see, right there. And there's also two holes up here, right across from them. I also have a handy little piece of moleskin here. I don't want to go and cut it up for it, but I just have that. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to set this down right onto the drum head. Pretty simple. You're going to make sure it's seated nicely though, because there's a lot that can go wrong with this part. See all that free play that it has? You want that, but you want it to be evenly dispersed all the way across here. Set that there. Okay. And then, I'm not film this entire thing, but it's a process of putting these little lugs back on and finger tightening. You also want to do this in a star pattern because I know it's such a small amount of tension on the head, but trust me, new heads are very, very, very sensitive. You don't want to mess them up before you even get to play on them. So in a star pattern, I'm going to reattach these legs and finger tighten them until my fingers can no longer bear the tension of tightening these bolts by hand. Once I'm done with that, I'll rejoin you again. Right. Now I have the drum. All the lugs are tightened, more or less as tight as my fingers, my bare fingers will allow them to be tightened, just so they don't fly around. You saw earlier how they were doing that. So what I'm going to do now is, I don't like saying this because I love animals, but there's more than one way to skin a cat. Noise. I'm going to take my drum key, choose a lug, any lug. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tighten this with a limp finger. No tension or anything in this finger. I'm just going to, spin it round and round, more or less until there's some kind of resistance felt, and I have to start using 2 fingers. But I'm not going to use 2 fingers yet. Cross, repeat the process. I'm holding this lug in place just so it doesn't wiggle. Quite good. Cheating a little bit. This one's a little tough. There we go. Oftentimes you'll find that one or more of your lugs is at a point where it just does not want to turn in. It's perfectly okay. You just want to make sure it's making contact with the washer, and it's not just completely 100% rusted or otherwise not lubricated. Keeping tension rods like these lubricated is one of the most important percussive things that you can do. It's like spot turning this at this point. But that sounds like something we've done in another video. That's a whole other ballgame. Alright, I'm just going to go around, make sure there's no residual tension. I'm turning these counterclockwise or left, if you will, and they won't turn. So now you have a bass level drum head. It's still dead, but it more or less works. This is where things get interesting. Things were already interesting, but it gets more interesting. Okay, so what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to once again do a half turn. But actually, you know what? Let's do a full turn. I'm going to do a full turn. Half and half. On all of these lugs, it just happens to be in the same order I showed you previously. Always do things in a star pattern. Always loosen, always tighten in a star pattern. That's my golden rule. If you're afraid of breaking heads, do it in a star pattern and you will. Boom. Boom. 2. 1, 2. Alright, I believe this is the last one. Okay, so now you're at a point where the head is at a decent pitch. See how it sings out like that? Let's put a snare on. It's kind of loose feeling. Not quite where we want it. So what we're going to do at this point is we're going to clear the head. To clear the head, we are going to match the lugs to each other. This is where you really got to listen, because right here, I'm tapping my stick. We'll use fingers. I hate using fingers. It does not provide the same sound. I'll use just the very end of my stick. I'll get a pitch from that lug. I'll then move over and sound them out to see which one is lower or higher. In the interest of bringing the drum head up, I notice that this one's lower. So what I'll do is I'll take it up about, I'll do a quarter turn and do the same thing with the opposite lug. Now let's check it out. A little bit better, right? We're getting there. Let's move on from these. Let's check up on these here. See, there's a parallel across these two. So I'm going to raise this up a little bit. I'll do an 8th turn. How about that? I'm just kind of going to play it by ear. You got to get to know your drum and your head. You know, it can be a process, but I promise you it's rewarding in the end. Okay, now this one's a little bit too high, so we're going to raise that like a 16th turn. I know I'm getting nitty gritty here, but on to these. Let's see how these compare. Not too bad. I didn't notice the problem here, but this one seems a bit low, so I'll raise it. 16th turn. Let's go try these. And basically here you don't need to necessarily go in a star pattern, you just need to make sure you tighten them across from each other, the corresponding ones. Re-angle here. Dun, dun. My prediction is this one will be lower. Yep. So I'm going to do actually an 8th turn for these, because that was a pretty significant amount lower. So I noticed when I went all the way around that time, excuse the motorcycles, I'm sorry, that these were significantly lower than the rest of them. So what I'm actually going to do is raise them a quarter turn. Let's see what we can do there. You notice the pitch of the whole drum head at this point has risen significantly. Now this one's a little high. These are both a little high. This one's a little bit more high, so I'm going to do this one down to 8, this one down to 16. This is really meticulous, I'm really sorry, but more or less good, depending on the angle of my stick. Now you get a nice singy drum. Okay, last part of this. You want to get a pitch. I like using B for these 14x4 snare drums. Most high schools are not going to have 14x4 snare drums, but that's another video as well. So let's check out a B. What's a B? So I sometimes tune my drum heads pitches. My marching drum heads I tune to intervals. I don't really care what pitches they are. I just want them to sing out and not be choked. One good way to find that out is to go ahead and test out your snare drum head. See if it sounds choked off. Now, where I'm at right now is good. I'm not exactly sure what pitch this is, but I could raise it maybe another half step. What you're going to do in that situation is, just like you detune the drum head, I'll give these all a quarter turn. How about that? The whole idea about this is to see what you like, see what suits you, and see what suits your orchestra and your sound best. Drums are very customizable. If you don't like how it sounds, there's a 100% chance that you can change how it sounds without hurting the result of getting a new drum, which is nice. I've seen a lot of people decide to get new drums instead of changing their heads or deciding to implement certain head speakers. This is a nice comfortable interval. So if you're satisfied with the pitch of your drum, turn your snares on and give it a try. I'm pretty satisfied with that. My drug of choice when it comes to muffling is a black hand towel because it blends in with things on the stage. It's low profile and you can adjust how much muffling you need. From there,